All right, welcome everyone to your deep dive, and today we're going to be looking at some excerpts from The Pure Spiritual Scientist.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's by Shri Suresh Kumar Makam, who is a disciple of revered Shri Raghavendra Rao Sahab. But from the beginning, he says that he prefers to be called just Shri Suresh.
Okay.
And right away, he has really kind of, I don't know, a disclaimer, I guess you could say.
Okay.
He writes, cleanse your manas, which is mind, with practice of sahana, and then go through literature, otherwise reality will be lost upon you.
It's an interesting opening for sure. He's basically saying, don't just read this passively, you need to prepare yourself. Quiet your mind, engage in some spiritual practice, and only then will you really grasp what I'm trying to convey.
That's a pretty high bar. What do you think that would, how would someone who is not familiar with these concepts prepare themselves?
Well, I think it's more about approaching the text with a certain mindset, like you're tuning an instrument before you play a piece of music. So Sri Suresh, he emphasizes this idea of sadhana, which in this context, it means a dedicated spiritual practice. It's a way to cultivate inner stillness and clarity. So he's suggesting that by quieting the mental chatter, we can actually create space for a deeper understanding.
So it's less about rituals, like specific rituals, and more about just cultivating this receptive state of mind.
Exactly.
Right.
Creating the right conditions for those seeds of wisdom to take root. And that brings us to another interesting element in the text. Sri Suresh weaves in these quotes from giants like Einstein, Gandhi, and Tagore.
Oh, yes. Especially Tagore's Where the Mind is Without Fear. It felt like he was setting a grand stage for his exploration of science and spirituality.
Absolutely. And that poem, and particularly the lines Sri Suresh chooses, they speak volumes about this yearning for freedom. Freedom from fear, freedom from doubt, and all those limitations that can divide us. And this yearning for freedom, I think, both internal and external, seems to be a recurring theme throughout the text.
It's like he's drawing a parallel between that freedom that Tagore describes and the mental clarity that's needed to really grasp the teaching.
Precisely. It's about recognizing the barriers within ourselves, the fear, the prejudices, all that mental clutter that prevents us from experiencing that state of fearlessness and openness.
So we're not just diving into science and spirituality, but we're also diving into ourselves.
And that's what makes this so compelling. It's a journey inward as much as it is outward. So this journey inward, right, it leads us to this key aspect of Sri Suresh's work, his deep reverence for his guru, his Acharya Deva,
Yes.
Sri Raghavendra Rao Sahab.
He paints such a vivid picture of his Acharya Deva's intense devotion, especially in those heartfelt prayers. Like there's that powerful passage where he describes him crying out to Mother, expressing his anxieties about dangers facing the country. It's raw emotion.
It is, yeah. It gives us a glimpse into the Acharya Deva's, profound concern for humanity, a sense of responsibility for the well-being of others. And Sri Suresh seems to be highlighting this power of passionate, selfless action, not just words, but like as a driving force for positive change.
It's like he's saying that true prayer isn't just asking for things, but it's about aligning ourselves with a higher purpose and then taking action from that place of alignment.
Exactly, yeah. And this kind of leads us beautifully into Sri Suresh's interpretation of Gandhi's famous quote, "Be the change you want to see in the world."
Right.
But he goes beyond the surface level, suggesting that true change actually requires this willingness to surrender to the will of someone who embodies that change, someone who's just overflowing with love and selflessness.
Surrender, though, isn't that a bit passive?
Well, not necessarily. It's not about,
How?
giving up or becoming a doormat. Think of it as consciously choosing to align your will with a higher purpose, a force for good, as it were. And Sri Suresh uses this incredibly beautiful language to describe this individual, this embodiment of change, radiating love, acting solely for the well-being of others. It's almost like he's describing a state of pure, unconditional love.
So it's more about aligning yourself with positive energy and letting go of like ego-driven desires.
Precisely. It's recognizing that change, lasting change, begins within each of us and allowing that transformation to kind of ripple outward.
Okay, I'm starting to see how these ideas connect. Now, Sri Suresh doesn't shy away from complex topics. He boldly brings science into the equation, even quoting Einstein. Science without religion is lame. Religion without science is blind. Then he throws in this concept of Kabbalah
Yeah.
and links it to both Einstein and a historical site. I got to be honest, I was a little bit lost there.
I can see why. Kubalaga isn't really a household term, is it? It's an actual place, a historical site, deeply significant to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. It's been this crossroads of faith and pilgrimage for centuries. And Shri Suresh, he's using Kubalaga as a metaphor.
A metaphor for what, though?
For Einstein's role in science, just as,
Sure.
just as Kubalaga represents a point of convergence for different faiths, right? Einstein, with his groundbreaking theories, he became this unifying figure for the scientific community. He shaped our understanding of the universe. And his work continues to inspire scientists even today.
So Einstein as a meeting ground for scientific thought. That's a pretty clever analogy.
Right. And Shri Suresh goes on to call Einstein and science Siamese twins, inseparable, intertwined. He argues that Einstein, he fostered this global scientific temperament, a level of trust in science that actually rivals faith in God for a lot of people.
That's a bold statement.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see his point. I mean, science has become so integral to our lives, it's hard to imagine a world without it.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that quote from Einstein about science and religion needing each other, right? Shri Suresh, he seems to be suggesting that science without the ethical guidance of spirituality can actually become aimless, even destructive.
Oh, yeah.
And religion, without the rigor of scientific inquiry, it can fall into dogma and blind faith.
So it's not about picking one or the other, but it's about finding that way to integrate them. And this reminds me of how he describes his Acharya Deva as this incredible blend of traditional values and a modern scientific outlook.
Yes. He paints a picture of the Acharya Deva as this fascinating individual, not just some otherworldly mystic, but someone who's deeply engaged with the world, interested in music, food, fashion, even finance. Makes him seem very relatable.
It does, yeah. It shows that true spirituality isn't about renouncing the world, but about finding a way to, live a full, engaged life while staying connected to a deeper sense of purpose.
And speaking of purpose, Shri Suresh mentions the Acharya Deva's development of human engineering of yogic science. Can you unpack that for us? Yeah, it sounds a little intimidating, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's essentially a system that uses the principles and techniques of yoga to facilitate personal transformation.
Okay.
So think of it as a way to refine and optimize our mental, emotional, and spiritual faculties, a kind of inner engineering for the soul, if you will.
So using the tools of yoga to shape and elevate consciousness.
Exactly.
Oh.
And Shri Suresh suggests that the Acharya Deva was a master of this art, guiding others toward a state of what he calls pure spirituality.
Pure spirituality. What does that even mean?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
But based on what Shri Suresh describes, it seems to be characterized by practicality, accessibility, and a focus on direct experience rather than dogma or rituals. It's about embodying spiritual principles in our everyday life, making them relevant to the challenges that we face in the modern world.
So it's not about escaping reality, but it's about bringing spirituality into the here and now.
Precisely. And this brings us to a very poignant moment in the text, Shri Suresh's prayer of submission.
Oh, yes. It's incredibly moving. So raw and vulnerable. You can really feel that longing for connection.
Yes, he just bares his soul, acknowledging his flaws and his limitations, and offering himself completely to his revered one. It's a powerful testament to the transformative power of devotion and surrender.
It's like he's surrendering his ego, his sense of separateness,
Yeah.
and merging into something larger than himself.
Yeah, and that act of surrender, that willingness to let go of control and trust in a higher power, is often seen as a key step on the path to spiritual awakening in many traditions. It's definitely something to ponder. It feels like, we've just scratched the surface of pure spirituality.
Yeah.
And was there anything else that Shri Suresh said about it that kind of stuck out to you?
Well, what really stood out to me was how he connects pure spirituality to the Acharya Deva's concept of human engineering of yogic science. It's almost like a blueprint for personal transformation.
It is. It's not just this vague ideal, but a practical system for growth.
Yeah.
And Shri Suresh, he emphasizes that this system, it's rooted in experience, not just theory.
Right.
He uses this analogy of a scientist conducting experiments, constantly refining and adapting their approach based on real-world results.
It's like, don't just take my word for it, try it out yourself.
Exactly, yeah. And that brings us to this very personal and poignant moment in the text, Shri Suresh's prayer of submission.
Yes.
It's just this raw expression of devotion, vulnerability, and surrender to his guru.
It's incredibly moving. He lays bare his flaws and limitations, and he's offering himself completely to the guidance of his Acharya Deva. It's almost like he's saying, I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to trust the process.
That's a really powerful way to put it, and it speaks to that central theme in pure spirituality, that true growth often involves kind of letting go of our ego's need to be in control.
Surrendering to something larger than ourselves, like a force for good,
Yeah.
that can guide us on our journey.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we don't have to go it alone. We can tap into that source of wisdom and guidance that's always available to us.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I'm walking away with a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of science and spirituality,
Yeah.
and the importance of personal transformation and the power of surrender.
And what's remarkable is that Shri Suresh presents these complex ideas in a way that feels so accessible, inspiring. He doesn't shy away from challenging us to really examine our own beliefs and to step outside of our comfort zones.
Well, for our listener today,
Yeah.
we hope this deep dive has sparked some new insights and questions for you. Maybe it's even prompted you to kind of reflect on your own spiritual journey, or how you might integrate the principles of pure spirituality into your own life.
Remember, as Shri Suresh emphasizes, it's not about achieving some, distant, unattainable state. It's about embracing the process of growth, moment by moment, with openness and a willingness to learn.
Thank you for joining us on this journey of exploration. We hope you feel inspired and empowered to continue your own quest for meaning and purpose.